Hey everybody, welcome back. Our next question is, it's just kind of one of those questions that we wanted to show people, to tell people. We don't get it all that often, but it is important, we do feel.
Okay.
The question is, what is the cost of obesity in the US each year?
Wow. Couldn't I get a weight loss question or something else?
Those are mine.
It's a good question. It's a little difficult to answer, I guess, because obesity issues within the U.S. I mean, obesity problems or problems caused by obesity, however you want to say that. There's so much more there than just being overweight and having a higher risk of heart disease and diabetes and other diseases.
Yeah.
Because obesity, it's also a contributing factor, for example, in sleep apnea. And if we don't get our proper amount of sleep, somebody could have sleep apnea, therefore they don't sleep very well. They go out the next day to go to work, they're driving their car, they have an accident. There's a lot of costs there involved. The cost of the accident, insurance premiums, everything goes up. The lost work days, the productivity, depending on what that person does for a living. There's so many costs right there, but that accident wouldn't be deemed an obesity problem.
Right.
Yet, in all actuality, it was an indirect cause, or obesity was an indirect cause of that accident.
So there are a lot of factors that play into it.
There's going to be a lot of factors that really play into this, and there's a lot of things that will add to the economic costs of obesity. Right. So we'll try and cover some of those. But it's really interesting because Forbes magazine recently had an article that said Americans spend more than $9 billion a year in increased gas costs for airplanes and cars because our weight, they have to use more fuel to fly the planes, and we actually use more in our cars. And actually, that's been determined in NASCAR because a couple of years ago there was that big fiasco with one of the drivers. He's too light. They should make all the drivers weigh the same, so all the cars weigh the same. He can get more, laps on his fuel. So it's really interesting how that actually plays in, but. That's significant, $9 billion a year just in additional fuel costs from obesity.
That's pretty significant.
And we do things like we spend $40 billion a year on diet products. I think that was a statistic from around 2008. So that's why this question, it's a tough question. It's a good question, but let's just take it in there's three people or three entities, I guess, that are really affected by obesity. There's the individual, there's the taxpayer, and then there's the employer.
Yep.
So if you look at direct costs of obesity each year in the United States, some of the direct costs would be healthcare. That's probably the number one direct cost of obesity each year in the U.S. And there was recently an article that I saw in the Wall Street Journal that said obesity is directly linked to our healthcare, and it causes an additional $190 billion. Yeah, $190 billion to the annual healthcare price tag.
Wow.
So it's significant.
That's significant.
Obesity now costs Americans more in our healthcare system than smoking. And it's directly linked to more deaths now than smoking also.
Wow.
So we really, when we look at this, we also have to look at those direct costs, $190 billion just in healthcare. But what about the indirect costs? And I kind of already spoke of some of them, the fuel costs, and the car accident example that I gave. So those indirect costs are things like work days lost. The article in the Wall Street Journal said it was over $39 million each year. Physician office visits are over 62 million. Restricted activity at work and lost productivity is about 29 million. And if you have bed-related days where you just can't get out of bed, so you're kind of stuck because of obesity, because of illnesses caused by obesity, I guess it would be. It's about $89 million a year. All this gets added to the price tag, and you can see that indirect cost of obesity really rises to 3 times the amount of the direct cost. The direct cost was $190 billion. Indirect cost of obesity costs America about $450 billion per year.
So that's quite significant.
It's significant. Okay. And this is just simply for being overweight.
Yeah.
Right? And you've got increased food expenses, you've got to buy plus size clothing, you got the absenteeism to work, you've got decreased productivity, again we mentioned it.
Yep.
So there's just so much that goes into it. And again, you know, you're paying for it as a taxpayer. So even, you know, if you look like Ryan, you're fit, you're trim, you're not obese, you don't lose productivity at work, you don't fall asleep while you're driving, things like that, it's still costing you money.
Yeah. Don't worry, by the way, you'll look like me again soon.
Yes, I will. But let's also take Obamacare, for example. You know, the United States government is so heavily endowed into the healthcare system. Love it or hate it, whichever side of the wall you fall on in the Obamacare system, it's going to cost businesses millions, billions of dollars because they're trying to find a way to help the healthcare system. And really, it's the responsibility of the individual.
Yeah.
And if we could just cut down in the obesity rates, we could significantly save on the costs of healthcare. The average person who's overweight will spend $1,800 more per year on healthcare than a person who's at a normal body weight. So, and I can attest to this because a couple of years ago when I got really heavy, I thought maybe it was just because I was over 40. You know, when I turned 40 years old, all of a sudden, I went to the doctors. Yeah, I went to the doctors more between the age of 40 and 41 in that year. And I thought it was just, wow, this is what it's like to get old. This is just what happens. I think a lot of people think that. It's just getting older. But it wasn't just getting older because now I haven't been back to the doctor. I haven't seen the doctor in over a year.
Right.
Because I've lost a lot of weight. I feel so much better. I'm much more healthy. And even though I still got some weight to go, you know, it'll never come back on. And my office visits to the doctors will only be for annual physicals. And I'll just watch my numbers get better and better and better.
So it comes back to the whole taking responsibility for yourself.
You have
your
to
health.
take responsibility for your health. Cut down your weight, and you will absolutely cut down the impact of healthcare to the U.S. economy.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.